Ray Dalio's dire warning that Bitcoin will be made illegal. But is he right? Now, billionaire investor Ray Dalio is the founder of the world's largest hedge fund, $150 billion hedge fund, Bridgewater Associates. And he's made a lot of noise this week as he stated that there's a, quote, good probability that Bitcoin could be outlawed, similar to when the US government made it illegal to privately own gold. Now, Ray Dalio's smart. He's made a ton of money. And when he talks, people listen. I listen. All right. Now, he has emphasized that he's, quote, not an expert on Bitcoin many times. And he's also said that Bitcoin has proven itself over the last 10 years and has never been hacked. And he even said, quote, it's one hell of an invention. But he still thinks that it will be banned, just like gold was about 90 years ago. So in this video, I'm going to break down why Dalio's interpretation of gold being banned in 1933 is completely wrong. Why that changes his entire viewpoint. I'm also going to give you some actual hard data, names, data that will refute exactly what he's saying and what you need to be watching as all this unfolds. So let's go. All right, welcome back. Now, before we dig in, just real quick, if you're new to the channel, my name is Mark Moss, and I make these videos because I want to change the way you think about money, because almost everything you've learned is wrong. And if you can learn to see and think about all this differently, then you can have more freedom, more options for your life, for your family, for your future. So if you like these topics and want to help me get them to more people, because YouTube doesn't want them to know, just take one quick second, click on that like button so the algorithm sends it out to more people. And of course, if you're not already subscribed, hit the subscribe button and the bell notification so you know every time I put a new video. Now today, like I said, we are talking about Ray Dalio, talking about why Bitcoin will be banned, and I'm going to show you my historical reference to show you that I think he's wrong. All right, now if we start right into this, Ray Dalio, of course, I've already gave him some introduction. He's the hedge fund founder, $150 billion hedge fund founder, Bridgewater Capital. He's super smart. He's made a ton of money, way more than I'll ever make in my lifetime. And he knows a few things. So I don't want to say that he doesn't know what he's talking about. But I think his interpretation of history is wrong. We're going to dive into that. He claims that the government will make Bitcoin illegal. All right, that's what he claims. He thinks that's going to happen. He said, quote, it's a good probability that it will be outlawed. All right, that's what he said. Sort of like when the U.S. government made it illegal to own gold. So that's what he's referencing. He said, hey, look, the government made gold illegal, and so I believe they're going to make Bitcoin illegal as well. Now, he has a new book coming out, The Changing World Order. Now, he's written a lot of books, and they're good books, and I recommend them. There's a lot to learn from them. I've read them, and I think that you should too. And in this new book, he's talking about the changing world order. He made the case that the Gold Reserve Act of 1934 made it illegal for individuals to own gold, which is correct. 1934, that did happen. He said, quote, because the government leaders didn't want gold to compete with money and credit as a storehold of wealth. So he's saying that, hey, in 1934, the government made it illegal to own gold because they didn't want a competitive money system. They didn't want to give people an option of where to put their money. So that is his interpretation of history. Now, if you watch my channel at all, you know that I love to go back through history because I believe that history can help us predict the future. But you have to understand history correctly because it gives you that lens to tell the future, and I believe that he's gotten it wrong, which because he's gotten it wrong, it changes his view, and I think he's gotten it wrong. So let's talk about that. So his assumption, like I said, is completely wrong. His assumption that Bitcoin will be made illegal like gold because of what happened to gold is wrong because he doesn't understand what happened with gold back there in history. So of course, like I said, if you watch my channel at all, you know that I love to go back in time. I love to go back to the future, and let's figure out what happened. All right. So, okay, now we've gone back in our time machine and we stopped all the way back here at the year 1913. This is the time when President Woodrow Wilson created what's known as the Federal Reserve Act. Now, what Ray Dalio was talking about was 1934 when the government made it illegal to own gold. However, his interpretation of what happened in 1934, I believe, is wrong because he didn't go far enough back in time. So, of course, we're going about 20 years before what he's interpreting. All right, so let's take a look at that. So the Federal Reserve Act created by President Woodrow Wilson, 1913. And that is the same year that the Fed, our favorite institutions, two of them, the Federal Reserve and the IRS, were both created at the same time. Now, it's interesting to understand that both the Federal Reserve and the IRS were created at the same time because a couple things. One, if anybody knows, prior to the IRS being formed, have this chart here. Up until 1913, Americans were able to keep their earnings. That's because without the IRS, there was no income tax. All right, but what I want to talk about is when the Fed and the IRS were created at the same time, and I think the reason why is because up until 1913, money was gold. All right, so we had money as gold. Eventually, gold went into the banks, and the bank gave us paper gold certificates. The dollar actually said gold certificate, and it represented gold. It could be converted into gold at any given time. All right, when the Federal Reserve was created in 1913, they created, under the Federal Reserve Act, they created, instead of a gold certificate, now you got a Federal Reserve note, and they were able to create money out of thin air, fake fiat counterfeit money. Now, at the time in 1913, when they rolled that fake fiat counterfeit money out, why would anybody take that, right? They've been using gold forever, or gold certificates, and now you're saying the Fed, the government wants us to use this fake paper money. Why would we do that? Well, the reason why is because they also created the IRS at the same time. So the IRS said, I have an idea. Here's how we'll get people to use that fake money. We will have them go around all year collecting it, so at the end of the year, they can send it back to us in the form of taxes. So it sends all of us into this game of collecting this fake money so we can send it back to the IRS at the end of the year. That's how they got them both in that time. Now, at that time, under the Federal Reserve Act, the banks, the Fed, were able to create this fake fiat money, but they had to keep 40% reserves in gold. So that means for every $100 of money, fiat money they had to keep $40 of that in gold, 40%. But here's the problem. Throughout history, no matter how far you go back, man has always decided to live beyond their means. Something about human greed or whatever it is, they always spend more. And so what happened is the Federal Reserve started printing money, fake fiat money, and they started printing more and more and more, and somehow they forgot about this 40% gold backing. Now, the Fed had created so much money that it created a massive problem. They had printed way too much paper money, and this is the part that Dalio got wrong. They created so much paper money that the government needed to be bailed out that quickly. In 20 years, they had spent too much money. So let's take a look at that. So here's kind of the timetable. This is what Ray Dalio is talking about. Executive Order 6102, which he's right. Under Executive Order of the President, in 1933, gold was going to be made illegal, had to be turned in. He's right under this. But let's look at this timeline. So March 4th, 1933, Roosevelt came into office. He was inaugurated. A couple days later, on the 6th, 2 days later, there was a proclamation, 2039, to close all the banks in the United States. Why? They closed the banks so nobody could get their money out. Everybody knew what was going on. And of course, as we've seen in multiple countries, we have a run on the bank where everybody goes and just takes their money to the banks. They were all closed. 2 days later, so what are you going to do if you're going to steal from someone, right? You want to lock their money in the bank. So that was the 4th, the 6th, a couple days later, on the 9th, Emergency Banking Act, Relief Act allowed the Federal Reserve to issue more money. But that was the problem. They had issued too much money, but they locked everybody's money in the bank, and then they issued more. A couple days later, on the 9th, the Proclamation 2040 continued. The bank holiday means the banks were able to continue to stay closed. A couple days later, 1 day later, Executive Order 6073 prohibited the export of gold. Now, no gold's even allowed to leave the country. Why? Because gold was money. The government was bankrupt. Creditors wanted gold. So no gold can leave no gold can leave the country. 3 days later, a few banks started to open, not all of them, but a few banks started to open. And then a couple weeks later, that is when this Order 6102 that we're talking about, that Ray Dalio is referencing, went into effect. And he's right. He is correct that it criminalized the possession of monetary gold, monetary being a key piece here, not jewelry, monetary gold, all right? And it mandated that people had to turn their gold in. All right. Now, what's interesting, a little side note, is that at the time they had to turn it in. It was worth $20.67. That's how much they were credited for turning in their gold. And then right away, after it was open, the government revalued it to $35. So it was a 69% increase in the price, basically debasing it, stealing the value directly from the people. So this is what Dalio has wrong, because I don't think he went far enough back in history. It wasn't that the government was trying to shut down a competing form of money. No, it was much more simple. The government created a system, they didn't abide by it, they bankrupted themselves, and they had to steal the money from the people. Like I said, at the time, gold was still money, and so the creditors wanted the gold. They didn't want the fake fiat money, all right? But this is why it worked with gold. This is why back then the government wanted to seize it, because gold was still money. Like I said, the creditors, they wanted the gold. The other thing that's important to understand is that the gold was centralized at the time. So what does this mean? Remember I said that they had gold certificates. So all the gold was already in the bank. And we had paper certificates, gold certificates, and so the bank didn't have to go door to door to door trying to take people's gold. Probably wouldn't have gone over very well. All those homes had guns, and so typically, or most likely, they wouldn't be able to get that gold. No, the gold was already in the banks, which is why the banks shut down, right? They shut down the banks to limit people from withdrawing, and then all they had to do was just say, sorry, you don't get your gold out of the bank anymore. As a matter of fact, now we've just credited your account. Instead of the gold certificates, now you have these Federal Reserve notes. It was a bait and switch. They was centralized. They already had it, which made it easy to confiscate. So again, if they had to go door to door to door, ransacking people's homes to get gold, it probably never would have happened. And we'll get more on that later. All right, now, the other thing that's important to understand, and I think Dalio is getting wrong, is that part of this is that today, we have the dollar, right? We're no longer on a gold standard in 1971. We got off of the gold standard. Nixon took us off of that. And so today, the dollar is backed by nothing. There's nothing backing it, all right? And so that's why this time is different. So Dalio thinks, just like what happened with gold, they seized it, they're going to do it again. But this time is completely different because dollar's backed by nothing. And what that means is that they don't need the gold. They don't need the Bitcoin, right? Back then, all the foreign governments were owed gold. And so the government had to take it from the people so they could pay off their creditors. They wanted gold. Today, no governments are demanding gold. No governments want gold. No governments want Bitcoin. So what the government has to do, they just can print more dollars. That's it. They can just print more dollars. And they can use SDR reserves. Now, I did a video recently. If my editor can put it up right here, you can see the SDR video. And I have another one coming out next week that's going to go even deeper into that. So stay tuned to that. But this time is different, all right? Now, I want to pivot just a little bit. That's what I think he's gotten wrong. But I also want to show what else he's gotten wrong. So the reason why he thinks it's going to happen is based off of wrong information, in my opinion. But even if maybe he's right, maybe the reason's wrong, but he's still right that it's going to get banned. I wanted to look at that just for a minute. Now, a lot of people say, and I get this in my comments all the time, that Bitcoin isn't going to be illegal. They're just going to regulate it, or they're going to regulate it out of existence. So the first thing I'd say is that I would argue that Bitcoin is already maybe one of the most, if not the most regulated assets that's out there. As a matter of fact, all of the government heavyweights have all weighed in on this. It's regulated by the IRS. Of course, they consider it property. They tax it. It's already been regulated by the SEC. The SEC had to determine, they had to say that it wasn't a security. It's regulated by FinCEN, the Financial Crimes Network, which is why you have to do KYC and AML. It's regulated by the CFTC, the Commodities Board. So there's already futures that are available. They regulate it for that. And it's already been regulated by the Constitution of the United States and ruled on by the Supreme Court, which we're going to talk about at the end. All right, now, there's another reason why, even if his reason was wrong, I still don't think it's likely moving forward. There's a couple things. One is because of what we call entrenchment. This is the level of penetration that Bitcoin has already done. Now, I talked about the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission. The new head of the SEC, Gary Gensler, is a Bitcoiner. Not only is he a Bitcoiner, he has been teaching Bitcoin classes at MIT. Here you can see Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He has a bunch of different courses here. Of course, here he is teaching those classes. And so he gets this better than most people, definitely better than people at the government. In addition to the head of the SEC, who's already a Bitcoiner, we have all these other people who are notable Bitcoiners in the government now. I'm sure there's way more than this, but these are all outspoken proponents of Bitcoin. And so all these people are inside the government fighting for Bitcoin. So there's been a level of entrenchment that's been reached. Okay, now continuing on that path of entrenchment, it gets even deeper than that. On top of all those people that we have in government, here we have the city of Miami, the mayor, Francis Suarez. I believe Miami is the second largest city in the United States, not a small city. They have put the Bitcoin white paper onto the Miami city website. Pretty big deal. The city of Miami believes that Bitcoin, they want to turn Bitcoin, the city of Miami, into a Bitcoin city, into a crypto city. And it gets even bigger than that. Directly from them, we can see that Miami agrees to pay its employees in Bitcoin. So not only are they going to put Bitcoin on the white paper on the website, not only do they want to turn it into a crypto city, they want to pay their employees in Bitcoin. They successfully passed a resolution that allows municipal employees to get paid in Bitcoin, which, like I said, is a pretty big deal. But it's even more than that. They said that Miami residents can pay fees and taxes in Bitcoin. So do you remember when I went back and I talked about the creation of the Federal Reserve and the IRS at the same time? And they created the IRS so you could collect the fiat and pay it back with the IRS. So a lot of people say that, well, as long as you're still going to pay your taxes in US dollars, then the US dollar is going to be there. But see what they did here? Now you can pay your taxes in Bitcoin. So again, could it be made illegal? Okay, maybe, but look at all the politicians that are pro-Bitcoin. Are they going to go after the second largest city in the United States? So that is what we are talking about, level of entrenchment, but it gets even deeper. Hold on, there's more. So we have the level of entrenchment. Congressman Patrick McHenry is pro-Bitcoin. And he's not just a congressman. As a matter of fact, he is the leader of the House Financial Services Committee. Now, in the government, there's tons of committees. They cover housing, they cover agriculture, they cover transportation, and some of them cover financial services, right? And so he is the head of that, the leader of the House Financial Services Committee, and he is a Bitcoiner. As a matter of fact, he's hosting the Bitcoin white paper on his official congressional website. He went on to say that policymakers should be on the side of innovation and ingenuity, which are vital, as he says, to American competitiveness. All right, let me give you a couple words directly from Patrick McHenry.
Even the Chinese, with their firewall and their extreme intervention in their society, could not kill Bitcoin. But new iterations of this that are trying to mimic it, that are not fully distributed, that are not fully open, there are different mechanisms to kill it.
All right, so there you have it, directly from the head of the Financial Services Committee. He says that there is no capacity to kill it. Even China, with their great firewall, couldn't shut it down. And I'm going to explain that to you in a second. But notice at the end what he did say. He said that all the other coins that are trying to mimic what Bitcoin are doing could be shut down. So just before you fill up my comments with whatever coin is going to be better than Bitcoin, just note of what the head of the Financial Service Committee has said right there. Now, in addition to all that level of entrenchment through the cities, through the governments, through the administration and whatnot, we have the U.S. markets on top of that. So Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Visa, PayPal, they're all invested into Bitcoin. I've talked about this before, and they lobby the government, they set regulations, and so they're going to fight. In addition to that, we have have all these publicly traded companies that have now put Bitcoin into their reserves, into their treasury reserves. Almost $100 billion of publicly traded companies have moved their treasuries into Bitcoin. So if the government decided to move against that and make it illegal, they would be basically stealing money from the entire financial institution. All these companies are storing their wealth in that, and it would vanish overnight. Now, if you've been paying attention, the economy and the markets are pretty fragile, right? They're pumping trillions of dollars into the markets and the economy to keep them from crashing. Do you really think they're going to want to suck hundreds of billions of dollars out, if not $1 trillion out of the economy? I don't think so. But like I said, anything could happen. And so I don't live in the world of absolutes. I like to live in the world of probabilities. So anything can happen. Aliens could come to the earth tomorrow and destroy the whole earth. It could happen. The probability of that happening is very, very low. Could Bitcoin be banned? It could. I believe the probability of that is very, very low. But let's take a look at this, exactly what McHenry was saying. He said that China, the great firewall of China's tried, and they haven't even been successful. Now, if you know much about China, it's been a communist country, and they have been censoring information, sort of like what's happening in the United States now. They have what's known as the Great Firewall of China, like the Great Wall, but it's the Great Firewall, and they've been blocking internet applications for their citizens for a long time. So there's no Google, there's no Facebook, none of that, right? So that's what he's talking about. Now, China has banned Bitcoin a bunch of times. Let's go through it. In 2013, before most of you have ever heard about Bitcoin, China already banned it. The People's Bank of China, the PBOC, prohibited financial institutions from handling or processing crypto transactions back in 2013. But that wasn't enough, so they banned it again in 2014. Laws forced banks to close all Bitcoin trading accounts. Okay, but that wasn't enough, so they banned it again in 2017. Exchanges and trading platforms were banned across the country. Still didn't kill it, so they banned it again. 2018, Bitcoin mining was widely restricted by the State Administration of Foreign Exchange. Still didn't kill it, so they banned it again. 2019, they blocked access to all domestic and foreign cryptocurrency exchanges and ICO websites. So they banned it over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times they banned it, and yet it hasn't stopped it. It hasn't stopped it in China. China has the largest population in the world, about 1.3 billion people, about 4 times larger than the United States. It's a big market, to say the least, and they haven't been able to kill it. They haven't been able to keep it out of the country, and they haven't killed it globally. So even if the US tried, like McHenry said, they wouldn't have a very good deal. Now, I want to show you just one other perspective real quick. The war on drugs. You've probably heard about this before. It started back in 1971. The DEA was formed, the Drug Enforcement Administration. Now, one interesting side note is notice that this was the same year that we went onto a fiat money standard. We got off the gold standard. And so we started spending money on all kinds of frivolous things. And we decided, heck, let's start a war on drugs. Why not, right? Sounds like a good idea. Well, it hasn't worked at all. If anything, it's only made things worse. We had 1.6 million arrests in 2018. That's 1 every 25 seconds is being arrested for drugs. The number one reason for arrest, 1/5 of the people being arrested is for drugs. In 2018, they had spent over $1 trillion fighting this war, fighting the war to end drugs. Haven't been able to do that. They spent $35 billion in 2020. So how effective has this war on drugs been? Well, let's take a look at this. We can see here just a quote to back up what I'm saying here. We can see that there was 1.6 million arrests for drugs in 2018. The numbers increased every year. It's increased every year. The top reason people have been arrested in the United States. Now let's look at this. How well or how effective has that been? This is the national drug overdose deaths. And look at this number. Look how effective all that money, that whole war on drugs has been. That's the deaths, but has it cut down on the industry? What about the people making money from it? Well, let's take a look at that. We can see this is the cocaine production in Colombia, and you can see that it has not slowed down at all. It's pivoted to a different country, but the level of cocaine has about stayed the same. Now, think about this. To grow cocaine or marijuana or whatever drug it may be, you have to actually grow it out of the ground. You actually have to process it, package it, ship it, smuggle it, break it down, distribute it, all those things. That's a physical product that dogs can smell and all that. If they can't stop this or slow it down, their war has only made it bigger and more profitable. How do they stop something completely digital? The other thing that I would ask you is that when the government propaganda comes out and they say we're having a war on drugs, that doesn't make you want to go do drugs, right? You understand that drugs are bad for you and you don't want to do them. However, when they tell you that you don't have a right to store your wealth in a way that they can't steal, when they tell you that you don't have a right to store your wealth in a way they can't debase, that only further proves that you need it. So the war on drugs doesn't mean you should go do war on drugs. The war on your ability to store your wealth in a way they can't reach, and they try to end that, that means that you need it. If you live in a country that would ban Bitcoin, it means that you only need it that much more. Now, the final one that I want to show you, and this is the big powerful one, is that passing laws, right? So let's say that they want to do this. They're going to make it illegal, or they're going to have to pass a law to do this. Typically, it takes about a year to go from a bill into a law, things like that. I showed you the level of entrenchment in the government, so who knows if that's even going to be possible. However, the United States Constitution and the United States Supreme Court have already ruled on this, all right? They've already voiced their opinion and they've already said something about it. Let's take a look at this. So if you don't know, Bitcoin is code. All it is an encrypted way to store your money, all right? It's an encrypted way to store your money on the blockchain, and they have already filed on that. Now, what happened is back in the 90s, the government said that encryption was munitions. It was like national security. It couldn't be sent, and they wanted to shut it down. Well, there was lawsuits that went into court, and the plaintiffs argued that no, cryptography is protected under the First Amendment, the right to free speech. And so what they did is they printed it out and they went and stuck it on the desk, and it was code. It was code. It was speech. And the United States Supreme Court, in this case, Bernstein versus the United States Department of State, realized that they said it was unconstitutional. So the Supreme Court has already ruled on this, all right? Which means that even if they wanted to change the law, we're going to see this cases, we're going to see it become bill, we're going to see it go to the Supreme Court. So we're all going to know this well in advance. If you decide you want to get out, you have plenty of time to get out. But with the level of entrenchment we have, the second largest city getting in, the head of the Financial Service Committee in it, the head of the SEC in it, China not being able to ban it, and the Supreme Court already weighing in on it, the IRS, the SEC, the FinCEN, all of them already regulating it, I don't know what else you're expecting. All right, let me know what you think. Leave me a comment down below. Also, I'm just starting a brand new Bitcoin only newsletter twice a week. I'm going to send to your inbox just Bitcoin information. It's linked in the description of this video. Go sign up for that if you want to get my new Bitcoin newsletter completely free, so you have the asymmetric information so you can get the asymmetric upside. Now, on this video, go ahead and ask me any question you want. I'm taking those questions and I'm answering them on my new channel called Market Disruptors. If I choose your question to be answered in the video on the new channel, I'm going to send you $25 in Bitcoin just for participating and asking the question. And that's it. Give me a thumbs up on this video if you like it. If you don't like the video, I don't know why, but give me a thumbs down. It's okay either way, but let me know in the comments. And that's what I got for you today, all right? To your success. I'm out.